Jesus said, listen, a healthy tree bears good fruit, but a diseased tree bears bad fruit. Now, how do we discern? What are some of the tools that we can look at to be quality fruit inspectors? Now, when I say this, I need to qualify it from the very beginning. Because in 21st century America, as we're coming out of the mega church movement, everybody discerns fruit based on numbers. Or as people put it pejoratively today, people discern someone's fruitfulness based on butts and budgets. Because they count the number of people in the seats and they count how big the budget is. So butts and budgets. That's how you know if somebody is called. And anybody who doesn't have butts and budgets, obviously there must be some problem. Maybe they're a false prophet. And I think that that's an error. Because there's all sorts of people who minister. I mean, the Apostle Paul wouldn't get called for a pastor's conference today because he probably never pastored a church larger than about 2 dozen. They were all house churches. So Paul wouldn't get the nod for it. Paul wouldn't be the guy at the church planting conference because he isn't able to boast of, I planted a church and within 2 years there was 10,000 people in it. I mean, if you think about it, Paul's budget wasn't all that great. I mean, he wrote the book of Romans as a support letter to try and get the gospel to Spain. And by all accounts, it doesn't seem that he ever got the gospel to Spain. So we need to divorce ourselves from the butts and budgets mentality. But meek discernment and understanding is what's needed. So here's some tools. First, we should pay attention to the manner of living a teacher shows. Do they show righteousness, humility, and faithfulness in the way that they live? See, it's amazing. You look at this in light of the way the world has gone. For a long time in church, all the pastors were reading all like the power business books, how to influence people and win friends and all this stuff. And so the pastor as the CEO was the model. A lot of us know that. Where it's like, you think about the CEO, you don't know the CEO all that well. You don't know what he does in his spare time. He's the CEO. He shows up at church on Sunday and he looks great. He's got his power tie on and he shows up and he wows you with his great giftedness and you don't know anything about it. And for a long time that was the model. But see that the pendulum always swings. And so now people, they actually want to know what their pastor, they want to know about their life. They want to see them interact with their wife and children. Because you had a whole slew of pastors who you never saw interact with their wives. And you find out later that they didn't like their wives. They were lousy husbands. And their kids didn't like them because they were never around them. They were unavailable. They were so busy, reading their press clippings that they didn't have time to tend to their first ministry. And I'm happy that that passed by. Because you know what? You know about somebody when you see their manner of life. You'll know more about the way that I walk with Jesus by spending an evening with me and my wife and watching me interact with my wife and my kids than you will from a million sermons. Because anybody can show up, put their best foot forward, and say all the right things. Anybody. I mean, we're all actors on stage in some way. But someone's manner of life. What is the fruit of their life? Now I love it. One commentator said, do they show righteousness, humility, and faithfulness? Righteousness, the idea of rightness. Do their lives reflect the righteousness of God? The rightness of God. They value the things that God values. 2, do they show humility? I think this is a big one. You know why? Because somebody who walks with God will be humble. Do you ever say, well, I want to be humble, get into the presence of God? Every time in the Bible, somebody comes into the palpable, tangible presence of God, there is a statement of humility. Look at Isaiah chapter 6. When Isaiah saw the Lord on his throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple, he said, I am undone. I am a man of unclean lips. When Peter had that great catch of fish at Jesus' encouragement. And Peter let those nets down with a little bit of like, oh man, I'll do it for you, Jesus. But I've been fishing this lake my whole life. My daddy fished this lake. I know every inch of this lake. What do you know, carpenter? And what caught that fish. There's so many fish, those nets were breaking. He said, Lord, away from me. I'm a sinful man. I mean, the presence of God was so profound in the book of Revelation that every time John gets before an angel, he falls down to worship the angel. The angel's like, hey, dude, stop. I'm just a worshiper too. Humility comes from being in the presence of God. Because in the light of His glory, who He is, we come and say, Lord, I'm a sinner. I need the Savior. I mean, you know what it's like. You wake up in the morning, you walk in the bathroom, and the light is off. And you might feel really great about yourself at that moment. You're in there, you're awake, maybe you got out of bed quickly, and you're just like, all right, bang. And then you flick that light on, and it's like, ah! You know? Because once that light gets turned on, like the fact that, you know, my hair's just like, you know? And you didn't realize it would be crusty, like hanging out this side, you know? You shine the light on it, and it's all there. It's all there. Humility. See, it's really interesting that it's easy for a minister or someone who's proclaimed to be a prophet to know everything but have no humility. A lot of people do that. They have all the theology right down the line. I encourage you to study theology. I don't believe it's a false dichotomy. But it's so easy to have all your theology right and miss the God who's all the theology is about. Because you can't say, this is right theology and I'm right and all this stuff and get in the presence of God, because God says, look, it's about me. And you may know all the answers, but I'm still calling you to serve those people. I'm still calling you to take off your outer garment like my son Jesus did at the Last Supper and wash their feet. Take the lowest form of the servant. Get down and dirty for my glory. Humility, so righteous living, humility, a heart that realizes absolutely that God is God and we need His salvation. And then, of course, faithfulness. Why is faithfulness important? Well, because God is infinitely faithful. I mean, our hope is built on the faithfulness of God. As it says in Philippians 1:6, I'm confident in this very thing, that He who started a good work will be faithful to complete it. God's faithfulness in our lives. And of course, in the laying out of elders in the church, it says that they should be faithful. Faithfulness is what's needed. Who can find a faithful man? So we should look at their manner of life. Notice we should look at the content of their teaching.